Well, four elderly Catholic women who hadn't seen each other for a long, long time were having tea, and one of the women piped up and she said, she said, my son is a priest, and when he walks into the room, everybody says Father. Well, one of the other women piped up and said, well, that's great, but my son's a bishop. And when he walks into the room, they say, Your Grace. Well, the third lady jumps in, and she said, well, that's wonderful, but I want to tell you, my son's a cardinal. And when he comes into the room, it's Your Eminence. Well, the fourth lady just sitting there kind of quietly, and finally they turn to her and say, well, what's going on with you? And she said, well, my son's not a priest or a cardinal or a bishop or any of those things. But my son's 6'2". He's handsome, he has broad, square shoulders, good manners. He's well-dressed, has a muscular body, and he's well off. And when he walks into a room, women say, oh my God! It's all a matter of perspective, isn't it? It's the way in which you look at it. I think our spiritual life is so much that way. Today we are kind of focusing on the first and second chapter of the book Spiritual Liberation by Reverend Michael Beckwith. And Michael Beckwith defines spiritual liberation as, quote, becoming free from the narrow confines of fear, doubt, worry, and lack, and living instead from a conscious awareness of one's authentic self, one's true nature of wholeness. It's really letting go of some of the stuff that seems to control our life and living from a sense of who it is that we really are, from a sense of our divine wholeness. And in unity, of course, we reference that in the context of our divine self, our divine nature, our spiritual self, or the Christ. Other cultures might call it the Buddha. There's lots of different terms or names for that energy field or that dynamic or that experience or that feeling. It doesn't really matter what we call it. It only matters that we are aware of it, that we are somehow in relationship to it, and that we have a sense about it that we are more than just these physical beings. And I think spiritual awareness, or that whole realm of spirituality, is really never understood in the world in the context of facts and form. We never experience it, as a list on a piece of paper, or see it as some formed sort of box or thing or dynamic or list of rules or regulations or laws or whatever it is that we might think it shows up. We really experience that whole reality in the context of the shift in consciousness that occurs within us as we experience our life, as we show up and as we become aware and open to that. And those shifts and experiences and transformations and things of that nature most often takes place when we least expect them, or they show up unexpectedly in an experience that we would least likely identify as one that it would happen in. I don't think that we can plan or facilitate a shift in consciousness. I think we can try, and I think a lot of people do try, and sometimes people create environments where shifts take place, but we can't ever actually orchestrate that sort of experience, because I think those shifts that happen occur in the context of the struggles that we often have in trying to live and to figure out our life. It's when we begin to grasp a hold of this need to make more of what it is that we are, and we begin to struggle with that. That's when those shifts begin to take place and occur, and when we have transformational moments and experience. Michael Beckwith, in his book, tells his story about his growing up and some of the family things that existed in his family, and the fact he went to University of Southern California, and when he was going to University of Southern California, he started smoking pot. But not only did he start smoking pot, he started selling pot. And not only did he start selling pot, he developed a network of selling pot to other cities And so it was more than just a simple recreational sort of childhood trying something out kind of experience. It was much beyond that dynamic. And he says, he doesn't know why he had his spiritual awakening or transformation. He said, maybe it was drug-induced. He doesn't really know, but he knows that he had a very profound dream that occurred, and then that dream he was stabbed, and part of him died. And when he awoke, he was different. He felt differently about himself and his life, and he decided to do one more deal, and then he would give it up, right? Well, we always do that. One more, right? So he did one more, and of course, he got busted. And so he found himself in a trial, and he was facing time in prison, and he said somehow during that trial, he said he just somehow knew that he wasn't going to go to prison. He didn't know how or why or what, but he was pretty calm for the most part. And somewhere during the course of his trial, some technical thing happened, and the case was dismissed, and it was dropped. And, it would be easy to look back on his sort of journey and looking at his success as a spiritual leader and as a minister and of a church of 4,000 people and the Agape ministries and his time on The Secret, and say, well, Michael just traded drugs for religion. That he just basically, it's the same sort of kind of energy that he used, and there's some truth to that. And we don't know, he doesn't know whether his transformational situation was, like I said, drug-induced or not. But what we do know is that he's more than just a pot-headed drug dealer who got religion. Okay? And I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about who biblically would sort of be associated with that. And I thought about Paul, because Paul was a murderer, he was a persecutor, he went after the, quote, Christians of the day. He stood by while Stephen was stoned. He was very intense, he was very focused, and he was into that whole persecution thing, and he was walking down the road from one town to another, and he had a transformational moment. And it shifted him from one side to the other. Literally, it was a complete shift, and he became the first Christian evangelist when he went out and he started all these churches and whatnot in the Gentile world. And he was a powerful, transformative figure of his day that came about as a result of a transformational shift. So Michael Beckwith, in one sense, became a new thought evangelist. That he discovered something about himself, and just as Paul did, Paul was able to use all of the skills that he had learned as a persecutor, all the skills that he had learned about going after people, and he was able to transfer them into his new calling, and he was able to use that energy, that understanding, and all that to create what it is that he created. And I believe the same applies to Michael Beckwith, that all the skills that he learned, he was able to use in a positive way in ministry. And if we think about that correlation to our own life experience, and all of the things that we go through in our childhood, all of the issues that we deal with, the hopes and desires and dreams and the struggles and the relationships that don't work and the times we're broke and all the things that we do and all of the process that we go through to get through those things and all the things that we learn, if we could see those things as they show up as a part of our journey and training to do what it is that we've come here to do, then perhaps those things, we might look at our life differently. That those experiences are there for us, not necessarily by divine design, but because we have them, we can embrace them and use them for something that's positive and powerful. And we see it around us all the time. We see people who go through difficult childhoods take that experience and begin to heal other people because they had a transformational experience that allowed them to do that.